Hi, welcome to History Talks. I'm your host, Will. This is Sebastian. In this episode, we continue our series on ancient Rome, and we will be discussing Caesar's victory over Pompey and his return to Rome. So, Sebastian, tell me, what happened after Caesar defeated Pompey at the Battle of Pharsalus?
After Pharsalus, Pompey fled first to Cilicia, but then after being consulted by his advisors, he fled to Egypt with his advisors and with his family.
Oh, that's interesting. So he went south of the Mediterranean to Egypt. Was Egypt part of the Roman Empire at this time?
No, Egypt was an independent kingdom. However, due to Roman domination of the Mediterranean, there was great Roman influence in Egyptian politics. Egypt at this time had a struggle over leadership between its two co-rulers, the pharaoh Ptolemy XIII and his sister wife Cleopatra. The country was somewhat evenly split between each's control. Now, when Pompey arrived in Egypt, Ptolemy had hoped to gain Caesar's favor and his support by killing Pompey.
Wow.
However, Caesar, arriving 3 days later, showed disgust and shock at the head of Pompey being presented to him.
Wow. So Pompey went to Egypt because they thought it would be safer, but soon found out it was not. And Ptolemy killed Pompey, thinking that would win him Caesar's favor, but soon found that would not be the case as well.
Yes. And, debate exists as to why Caesar felt such sorrow at seeing his political opponent dead. Some interpretations say it was sadness because Pompey was a former friend, and evidence includes the fact that reports from the time said the tears seemed genuine, and later on he was willing to pardon another political opponent connected to the Civil War, Cato.
Interesting. So in this view, Caesar saw Pompey as a worthy adversary and potentially wanted to reconcile with him.
However, other interpretations say that these tears were false, and he was simply trying to get an excuse to invade Egypt. Evidence for this being the fact that at the beginning of the following year, Caesar mocked Pompey for having fought weak opponents in the past.
Interesting. So in this view, Caesar feigned disgust with Pompey's death and thought to himself, now I have casus belli.
Yes. And others still say it was simply a matter of Roman pride. It was seen as not right that a Roman citizen would be executed by a foreign government, and this does indeed seem to be how much of the Roman public felt about this incident.
It does sound like the Roman way. Do you think that's the most likely explanation?
Possibly, though I would not discount the fact that he pardoned Cato, so for all we know, it was a mixture of the three.
That could be.
However, Caesar then became involved in the Egyptian dynastic struggle, and eventually Caesar had romantically fallen for Cleopatra, becoming a full-on opponent of Ptolemy XIII, which led to a brief war which Caesar swiftly won. Cleopatra had become pregnant with Caesar's child by the end of the war, and was placed as the sole holder of the Egyptian throne, the sole monarch of Egypt, by Caesar in exchange for her loyalty, after which Caesar left Egypt.
Wow, and so that gave Caesar another reason to oppose Ptolemy, because with Ptolemy out of the way, Caesar's son with Cleopatra would be next in line to rule Egypt.
Yes. After he left Egypt, Caesar defeated an invasion from the east by a former opponent of Pompey. This opponent had heard that Pompey was dead and had hoped to take advantage of the situation to reclaim some land that had been lost to Pompey. However, Caesar finished this war so quickly that he later remarked with his infamous quote, "Veni, vidi, vici." I came, I saw, I conquered.
Oh, wow. So not only did Caesar defeat Pompey, he also fathered an heir to the Egyptian throne, defeated his heir's competition, and defeated an old enemy of Pompey who thought he might have an opportunity with Pompey gone.
Yes. Then he finished off what remained of the opposing side of the Roman Civil War, which was led by Cato, and then he returned to Rome triumphantly, with peace finally established. Now, one of the most long-lasting changes Caesar would implement is replacing the existing calendar. You see, under the role of Pontifex Maximus, he replaced the Roman calendar with the Julian calendar, which would become the standard calendar in the West for the next 1,600 years. And when it was replaced, its replacement, the Gregorian calendar, was heavily based on the Julian calendar, and it's the calendar we use to this day.
Interesting. That's quite a legacy. And is the Julian calendar named after Julius Caesar?
Yes. Now, for all this time, if you'll remember, the Senate had established a role of a dictator who would come to rule for a year in the event of a crisis. So all this time, Caesar had simply just been renewing that crisis dictatorship year after year. But in 44 BC, Caesar had the Senate officially declare him Dictator perpetuo, or in English, Dictator for life.
Wow. So Caesar said, hey, let's not waste time renewing my dictatorial powers each year. Let's just keep it simple and just make me dictator for life. That'll be a lot easier for everybody.
Yes. And this was much to the upset of those in favor of the Republic and its values.
Oh, because one of the core values of the Roman Republic was that they don't have a king.
Yeah.
And being a dictator for a life, that sounds a lot like a king.
Yes. And this would lead to the end of Caesar's reign coming a mere 2 months later, in March of 44 BC.
Ah, beware the Ides of March. And we will discuss that in our next episode of the History Talks. See you all then.
Make sure to watch the rest of our Ancient Rome series and to like and subscribe.